Hello and welcome to episode 5 of the Pentland Triathletes Meet a Triathlete. We are still going. This is quite an achievement. We'll see how many more we end up doing, but so far so good. And tonight we've got an extra special guest. Yes, it's our club secretary. So I hope you are ready for some deeply challenging questions about the AGM agenda and the minutes from last year, because club secretary is a role that everyone here really strives to build up to, and there's a bunch of them really want to hear a lot of detail about that.
Great. Does anybody want it?
Our guest is Cole Barber. He's a club member. He is our club secretary, and in all seriousness, Cole's got a pretty serious story to tell us about. And for those who know or are about to find out, because of Cole's story, we're not going to do the normal run through, starting in the beginning and finishing in the end. We're going to start with the now, then we're going to go back to the beginning, and then we'll finish off with a roll through to looking ahead.
Yeah, indeed.
So, Cole, let's start right in the crux of the story. Talk us through last year, what was happening last year, and then how that built up to what happened in the beginning of this year.
Yeah, so after suffering with back pain for almost a year, and having some fairly robust physio, thinking nothing more of it, just had to rein in the training, couldn't run, short bike rides, still able to get in the pool, but something wasn't going right with my back. And fast forward to early January of this year, I managed to, what I then discovered was fractured 2 of my vertebrae getting into my car. So hospitalized, all kinds of scans and tests, and eventually they came up with the diagnosis that I had multiple myeloma, which is a cancer of the blood and bone marrow that basically affects your bone integrity. It causes a lot of problems over time in terms of your ability to combat infections and anemia and just general bone weakness. Stage 2 was where they caught me. You can only get stage 3 with myeloma, but they caught me at a good time. I still consider myself quite fortunate, and it's one of the little C's. They can't cure me, but they can treat me. They told me I had an old man's disease, which was should have been comforting at the time. But yes, ultimately, what we've been going through in the last kind of 4 months is just an intensive chemotherapy treatment, which will eventually lead to stem cell treatment. They're going to harvest my own stem cells and put them back into me once they've given them a wash, which will lead to a couple more cycles of chemo. So come September, October time, I should be in a position whereby I'm looking to be in what they call a remission or suppression, and looking to get back into some kind of version of light routine of exercise.
We'll come to that at the latter stages. So
yeah,
just in the early stages of the symptoms, and as the symptoms were building, to what extent did you think it was anything other than a training injury or a niggle? At any point before diagnosis and before the incident in the car,
no,
did you think this is something more than normal?
Nothing at all, other than the fact that a niggly bad back that just wasn't sorting itself. But ironically, the week before it happened, I managed to get back in the pool. Not exactly smashing myself up and down the pool, but it was good to be back in and doing some good physio and yoga. But clearly, the myeloma was kind of establishing itself, and without the the fractured vertebrae, they still wouldn't have.
So bone fragility is a key thing, isn't it? So
big time.
A fracture is a kind of thing that will show itself.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, So they kept asking me if I'd experienced any, significant trauma, falls from height, any, bike accidents, and I was just walking to my car. So they obviously raised some concerns, and through all of the tests and all of the scans, they managed to come back and say this is absolutely pointing in the direction of multiple myeloma. So It's good to get to the bottom of what was finally happening. So,
yeah, absolutely, and get on with the treatment.
as scary as it was,
Yeah. So in terms of kind of symptoms, quite a lot of people talk often about different types of cancer, whether it's prostate, breast cancer, whatever the case would be, about symptoms and what people should be looking out for. So what would you say if someone was showing similar symptoms, are the things that you would be recommending people just look out for and start asking more questions about if they're going through the same kinds of things that you were going through?
Yeah, totally. Well, it's called multiple myeloma because it basically infests itself in the bigger bones. So your likes of your pelvis, your spine, and your rib cage. And I actually experienced quite a lot of discomfort in my rib cage for a good few months, and obviously wasn't seeing that as any signs of anything else other than just part of
fatigue and getting a bit older.
Yeah, possibly.
Doing a lot of exercise.
Yeah. So yeah, prolonged back pain, and getting pain and discomfort. Anyone else feeling fatigued, slightly, anemic, and definitely signs to go and go and see your GP and ask them to kind of dig a little bit deeper. And it just so happens that me kind of having the experience that I did when I was getting into my car was absolutely necessary for me to be diagnosed effectively. But the team up at the Western NHS team on Ward 7, incredible. They're all superheroes. And apart from the 24 hours I spent on a trolley in the corridor in the Royal, initially when I was hospitalised, my journey has been absolutely incredible. NHS, they're on their knees, but they've really kind of looked after me all the way.
And I'm conscious that you're still in the middle of treatment. There's another phase to go.
Yeah.
So it's more often you'd be hearing about this from someone talking about it publicly or on TV or whatever at a later stage, perhaps. So I'm conscious of that as we ask these questions. But it's obviously a physical as much as it's very, very physical, but it's as much an emotional and mental battle as well. So can you just give us a bit of an insight into your reaction emotionally when the news broke and how you've been dealing with the mental side of it from then on?
Without swearing.
No, crack on. There's not that many people listen to it, so swear away.
Yeah. So no, initially it was nobody likes to hear the C word, but then when you start to come to terms with what type of cancer it is and the fact that yes, it's incurable, but it's invariably one of the ones they can treat. So given the alternatives, I'll take that. So I keep telling everybody it's one of the little C's, because I see people when I go in for my treatment twice weekly at the Western, and these guys have been hammered with different types of chemotherapy, and it's a bit of a leveler for me. But for me, for my journey, initially it was a bit because I was an active guy, just 54 years of age, you don't really expect to be told that you've got something as significant as multiple myeloma cancer that's going to stop you in your tracks. But it's you come to terms with that, and it's all part of the kind of journey that you're on to think, well, okay, it's going to be uncomfortable for a while. Lots of chemicals being put into my body, and the family as well. They go through that journey just as much. It takes a bit for everybody to get used to. There's people who do cancer and people who don't. You learn that very, very quickly, because people find it kind of awkward to be, around you and have that conversation. But I'd openly encourage anybody to, if they have anybody in family, friends, neighbours even, go and address that initial conversation, because once you've got over the initial shock, you want people to be, coming to you and talking to you about it. But yeah, there's still a bit of a way to go for me, but
okay,
I'm being as positive as possible.
And physical fitness. Last couple of things on this, and we'll see how we roll from there. But obviously, if you're doing what we do, if you're in a triathlon club, if you do the things we're going to hear that you were doing, you're pretty fit. Has that helped? Was that, when we talked before, you mentioned the doctors talked about that. So did that make a difference, being physically fit and having spent a long time doing the hobbies that you do?
Yeah, totally. I saw the way of explaining it, what direction they were going again with the treatment was, you're a fit guy and we are going to smash you. So they've kept the word. And certainly, my fitness levels have stood me in good stead to be able to cope, with the intensive treatment that I've been going through. But there's been side effects that they've had to kind of tailor the treatments and the medications, but they know what they're doing. I'm not their first guinea pig. So yeah, certainly being as fit as I am has stood me in good stead, really, to be able to go through the intensive treatment plan that they.
And then similarly, psychologically, I remember when the news broke online and there was a bunch of messages flying around, a lot of people were messaging you saying it's an ultra, it's a triathlon.
Yeah.
You can do it. You've done all those things before. You've more than capable of smashing another big challenge. Do you see a kind of crossover from that psychologically, kind of how you would approach a really big event, and has any of that kind of helped you in terms of how you're approaching this?
Yeah, you have to. It's you can't really get out of your bed every morning and feel sorry for yourself, because ultimately, like I've said, there's people going through a far worse journey than I am. But you just kind of accept that what's happening is a means to an end, and yeah, you've got to be just kind of getting a different headspace, but more so trying to make sure that the family are okay as well. Because I mean, I don't mind going through this. This is just something that it's a necessary means for me to an end. But yeah, just trying to be aware of the family that are going through exactly the same as well. So
okay,
been aware of that.
So we'll come back to looking forward towards the end of the chat. But what we like to do on the podcast, obviously, and you've seen some of the ones before, is go through people's backstory and their triathlon and sport backstory. So let's go back to the very beginning.
Sure.
And start with young Cole and growing up and sports that you were doing growing up. What were you into? What were you doing actively outdoors back in the young days?
School-wise, cross country. I mean, everybody normally hates the cross country, but for me, it was just good escapism. I was 3 stone dripping wet until I was about 18 anyway. So, running was always something that I found easy. And just going through my teens, I got into martial arts and then moved to Scotland when I was 19 to Highland Perthshire. So having the Highland Perthshire as your playground wasn't bad. But at the time, I was a head chef in a busy hotel, raising two young girls. So getting the time to kind of get out and about and do exercise as well. But played football every weekend in Perthshire amateurs. I'd do a breakfast shift, jump in the car, drive to wherever in Perthshire the game was happening, and then get back to the hotel for dinner at 5 o'clock with muddy knees under my checks. But yeah, so just football, and then local leisure centre did circuit training a couple of nights a week as well. So you just go and do the circuit training as well, because you put the kids to bed and have some time to yourself. So I think that I'd only started running seriously and I signed up for my first race, which was the Lochrannoch half marathon.
That's a good race, because some people here have done the Lochrannoch half and the full marathon.
It's a horrible race. It's on tarmac the whole way. But I'd done a breakfast shift and drove, just about made the start line.
So you worked and then you went to your first half marathon.
Yeah. Because
that's impressive.
Just what you have to do. And I just remember going off far too fast and absolutely just melting at 10 miles and thinking, maybe I didn't approach this with the right frame of mind.
It's not quite cross country.
I got a nice slate for it anyway, and I still have it. So yeah, 93 was the first time I'd ever entered a proper race, and then I got employment on the rigs. So any race that I'd entered, I was basically training on a treadmill in one of the legs of a semi-submersible rig.
Wow.
So 2 hours on a treadmill was definitely type 2 fun, but it was what you needed to do just to be able to get the miles in.
And it was probably in a box in a treadmill as opposed to looking out over the horizon and the sea.
Yeah, you just kind of had a round kind of leg you were in, but there wasn't
In a leg.
no views. Yeah. You walked down the stairs in one of the legs, and there was a gym.
Wow.
So yeah, that was the only way that you could train. But yeah, so started off just doing the marathons. I think I did Fort William Marathon about 5 times. Actually proposed to my wife, I think, on one of the marathons I did.
Wow.
And then
running it together, or?
Oh no! She was waiting for me at the finish line.
All right, so you posed at the finish line.
Yeah,
okay.
I think she was more worried about trying to get a paramedic, but I looked like I was going to whitey. So I proposed, and then I think I threw up all over my feet. And
oh, lovely! That's such a charming story.
That was part of the wedding speech. But yeah, just at that point, I was literally just kind of doing marathons, and then obviously got involved with Harmony Pentland Runners, and my good friend and mentor Ian Morris was responsible for me getting into the hill running and ultimately getting into the ultra scene. So I think I've pretty much done all of the Scottish ultras 2 or 3 times. So that it was a kind of natural progression then, knowing that we had a sister club that did triathlon, thinking.
Okay, we'll come to the triathlon. So in terms of the ultra marathon, and I wasn't completely aware that until we spoke the other day that you'd done as many as that. You'd been involved in all of them, including the Grand Queen of, or was it the King of whatever it is,
the Holy Grail.
The Holy Grail, that's what better, of ultras in Scotland. So tell us about that.
Well, the West Highland Way race is the full 96 miles, and it's balloted, and somehow never managed to kind of get it ticked off the bucket list before I got into triathlon. But after a few years of doing triathlon, I thought, I've got to try and get this ticked off the list as a beautiful crystal goblet that you get, for crossing the finish line. And
let's just say that again slowly. It's 96 miles of trail running.
Yeah. I managed to get 20 minutes sleep at Balmoral. I literally just lay down on the grass, I put a buff on my head, and then somebody kicked my feet 20 minutes later and went, right.
But let's also talk about how long it actually took you, and that to get 20 minutes sleep in how long?
Well, I got my money's worth. The cut-off is 35 hours, and I think it crossed the line in 34 hours and 12 minutes.
So in 34 hours and 12 minutes, you covered 96 miles and you slept for 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's but it's such a fantastic race, and anybody who's either run it or marshaled it will know that it's such a fantastic event just to be part of. And I'd actually didn't come out of the ballot for it for that year. It was a couple of years ago. So we basically got an email from the race director saying, "You haven't come out of the ballot. You're not on the waiting list. Do something else this year." So I'd actually entered for the full distance outlaw triathlon down in Nottingham, which was 6 weeks later. So it was a no-brainer once I got the email in January to say you've got 5 days to accept your place in the West Highland Way race. It was like, that's happening.
And just a few short months until the race itself.
Yeah, totally. So so from January to June, I didn't actually do an awful lot of training, to be fair, if I was honest. But yeah, it's an eating and drinking race more than anything else, and you have a team looking after you. So a few of the guys from from Harmony Runners came and supported me, and then they run with you for sections of the race as well. So
well, that's pretty incredible, but it's only half the story because we haven't even got to triathlon yet. And what I noticed in all of that backstory was the distinct lack of swimming and cycling. So let's talk about swimming and cycling and how you're in Harmony. There's a triathlon club, and you need to swim and cycle. So how does that come around?
Well, yeah, talk about a rude awakening. I couldn't swim, still can't. It looked like I'm drowning gracefully. Even with coaching, I'd never owned a road bike. First time I actually got my brother-in-law's cast-off cycle to work, Fuji Robe, which I still have as my backup bike. And the first time you get on that bike and the tires seem awfully thin, and you do quite a bit of wobbling. But yeah, I knew it was kind of just one of the disciplines that I had to kind of get my head around. But it was, it was a bit of a learning curve for me with a couple of loops in it. Getting used to the swimming and the cycling. The running was 1 out of 3, wasn't bad. I wasn't bad at the running, but yeah, the swimming was something that I didn't quite get to grips with till probably a year into my triathlon.
So when you say
journey.
you couldn't swim,
Yeah.
could you swim at all, or
I could
could
get
you
from,
paddle around? Or?
I could get from one end of the pool to the other, but
Right, okay.
But I actually went to get some swimming lessons and coaching from Carl Ziner, one of the club coaches at the time. And when you look at a video, I look like one of them wind-up frogs that you drop in the my left leg just seemed to be doing its own thing. But and I don't think that's changed an awful lot, actually. But I actually remember Norman Dixon, who's former club member, who's no longer with us. He was swimming behind me at the commie for one of the Monday night sessions, and I remember him saying to me, he says, "What are your legs doing?" And I was like, "I have no idea."
that seems to be a thing that happens quite often in the club. I've had that with Frank behind me. Have you any idea what your feet are doing?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No, but I get to the other end of the pool, so I must be doing something right. But I remember the first triathlon I entered.
That's where I was going next. So let's talk about the very first actual event.
It was one of the Border Series Peoples. So Jerry Yates had convinced me to go down and do the Peoples. I can't remember whether it was a sprint or an Olympic distance, but I completely got my swim time wrong. And I think I was the last one out of the pool in my wave to rapturous applause. So get on the bike, and it's you're trying all kinds of things in the early days. You're putting elastic bands around your shoes on the pedals, and you just kind of decide what works for you and what doesn't. Mm-hmm. And they didn't work for me. But I enjoyed the bike, to be fair, and then obviously caught a couple of people on the run. But yeah, definitely.
So you could actually run after cycling.
Oh yeah, just. But yeah, I think that was me. Kind of, I'd caught the bug by then. I'm thinking, this isn't too bad at all, as long as I can.
So you've done you've done the sprint series then in Peebles, and you've got the bug, and it starts to build up. So what are the next kind of levels of events that you ended up getting into?
Go big or go home. It was the first year of the Edinburgh 70.3 Ironman, and for those who
people who've done that,
survivors.
There's a special club of survivors who get together once a year to counsel each other.
We throw reeds in the water from the beach for those that didn't come home. They should never have let that swim go ahead. It was horrible. But me being as stubborn as I am, that a lot of people were turning before the first buoy and just wanting back out the water. I actually went for the buoy. I foolishly didn't, I don't in my head that I didn't want to be disqualified when I got onto the beach. So by the time I got back off out the water and onto the beach, and just threw up a couple of liters of salt water.
Was your wife watching this? She wasn't expecting a second proposal at this point?
No, not at all.
Did you throw up all over the beach?
No, she was nowhere near, thankfully. Otherwise, she would probably give me a good hiding for getting in the water. Yeah. But and then got onto the bike, and it was quite a hilly bike ride, if I remember rightly. But no, that was a good experience, and because that was half distance, psychologically, that was me thinking, okay, that's the half distance done. What's next? So the natural progression for that was, I think Braveheart was the next one I did after that. Mm-hmm. Me and Dave seemed to kind of follow each other in events. They would do it, then I'd do it, and then it kind of led to the X-Tri scene as well. But the Braveheart was a good event. It was a bit more intense in that you did the swim, and it was a lock swim, and by that point, you're wetsuited, so you kind of get into to know.
And you didn't have to submit a swim time like a pool before.
No. That was always an advantage when you can just take your time with your swim. But the good thing is about these races as well, there's so many different diverse, groups of people that do it. It's not necessarily all about the elitism, and that's what kind of made me feel as though it was a sport that I could.
It's a community, isn't it?
It is.
And it's a supportive community. Everyone's looking to help each other out.
Yeah, absolutely. And because of that, I mean, I knew that with with my swimming. Bike times would never get me podium anyway, but that's not why I was doing it.
Exactly.
And it's certainly one of the reasons why, certainly, joining a club like, Pentland was, was the reason why I'm still kind of involved in the club today, So.
Cool. And then the real Ironman.
Yeah. So Barcelona, 2019, was it? Yeah, so once you sign up for an Ironman, I think it starts to get a bit more kind of serious. So I went and spoke to Carl Ziner. So I thought, well, if I'm going to do this, I might as well do it properly, bring a coach on board. And yeah, no regrets. And I'd say to anybody, you know, if you're gonna do your first full distance triathlon, and you're thinking about bringing a coach on board, yeah, do it, because it's the difference between you maybe following a book or some kind of program you find online, and somebody who's actually giving you a program every week
and working with you as things change.
Exactly, and I'm basically checking up on you and making sure you're covering the miles, and you know, if there's a day where you can't do a specific a session, you know, alternate
How
it
to adjust,
but you will get the miles in for that week.
And sometimes also making sure you don't do too much.
Exactly, and it's about making sure you don't overtrain and risk injury as well. So I got to the start line of Barcelona in the best condition I think I possibly could have been in, and that's, you know, psychologically. I just remember standing in the in my wave waiting to get in the water, and they were playing AC/DC Thunderstruck, and you know, that feeling, you know, that emotion just before you get in the water. But you look around, you see a lot of people are kind of really intense and they're looking really anxious. And I remember seeing her just looking over to my left, and there was a lassie, and she was, you know, she was looking like she was quite nervous. I was like, you've done all the training, you know, you're here, you know, you're injury free. All you've got to do now is get in the water, and that's where my headspace was.
If you get the training right, then the training is the worst bit, and the race is good fun. It's hard, but it's good fun.
Yeah.
You don't get the training right, the race isn't a lot of fun.
Exactly. And like I said, I was in a good place physically and psychologically as well. So swim is incredible, but I sea swim, and I just remember the way that the bottom of the seabed was waved. You could literally just follow a line and keep it.
So a completely different scenario to Edinburgh.
Yeah, you could actually, without being lifted up and battered on top of other people. It was a really good swim.
So I mean, it's quite lucky with a sea swim, because there are people who have done Barcelona as well, and I think it can be quite rough.
Yeah,
it just depends on circumstance or luck.
Yeah. So yeah, I kind of got lucky that year. And the bike itself, you know, got out of the water and got on the bike and felt comfortable. It almost wasn't my day, because there was a stray dog had decided. We were probably about 20 odd miles into the bike. A stray dog came out from the side of the road, and I'd stopped to take some fluid on board. I'd slowed up. Two of the guys that came past me, and they had to slam on, and they went over the bars. And I had to navigate my way through, you know, dogs and bikes and bodies, and I just narrowly missed out on that. And that's the difference. You know, you can do all the training, and you can.
Something like that happens.
And something like that can just really kind of ruin.
Oh, you have a dodgy pizza. Something like that there.
I guess. But yeah, I actually got off my bike and helped the guy, and he was really concussed. You know, I don't even think he was actually paying too much attention when I tried to reassure him that his bike wasn't that damaged, but his race was over. But one of the highlights of that race as well, I was out on the bike, and a cameraman on the back of a motorbike came past me and fist pumped him. And you just think, yeah, this is good.
This is great. Yeah. So other significant, there are a couple, and time's moving along here, but other big events, there have been some other things as well, haven't there?
Well, yeah, you do the Ironman and you think, right, what's next?
And most people would actually stop at that point, but no, you're looking bigger.
Yeah, I'm kind of not wired right, so you're trying to think, what's the next big thing, and ultimately, you know, it's the X-Tri events as well. So a couple of the guys in the club had done Keltman, and when you look at what, you know, Keltman represents in terms of you know, Scottish triathlon, it's one of those, again, holy grail races that you just have to kind of get involved in. So yeah, I was lucky enough to come out the ballot the first time I entered. But again, you know, you have to. I didn't bring a coach on board, because I convinced myself that I'd done all of the kind of training I needed to do previously with a coach. So all I needed to do was just focus on, you know, the actual terrain for this race.
And for those who aren't familiar with Keltman, just tell us quickly what the distances are of each, and the run has obviously got a unique element as well, but just give us a breakdown of the event.
Yeah, so the swim's point to point. So they basically just put you on a coach at 4 o'clock in the morning and ship you around to what's affectionately known as Sheepshed Field, and they light the is it the tricolor, and you feel the heat, and there's you know a Scottish band there just beating on the drums and playing the pipes. Just getting in the water, as it's getting light, is just.
And how far is
really
that swim?
special. It's just over 2 miles.
3
Is it?
kilometers. Sorry.
Yeah,
3 kilometers.
Yeah, 3K.
Yeah, 2 miles.
So 3K point to point. So you have to navigate your way around 2 islands, and then they'll light the beach up with buckets of fire, and you just kind of spot on that.
Right.
It's supposed to be a fairly interesting swim because of the amount of jellyfish. But the year I did it, there wasn't any jellyfish.
Okay.
I was actually
How disappointing. Yeah.
No, I felt like I've been robbed of the opportunity to swim through jellyfish.
And then the bike ride is how far? And the run?
It's 100 and
Help them out, anyone?
120 miles.
120 miles, yeah.
120 miles on the bike.
Yeah, and it's not flat. And I just remember the last 40K turning into the wind at Killock, and you just feel like the world just hates you. But you just kind of try and stay focused and keep spinning. Even in granny mode, you just have to kind of get through it. But it's about the fuel as well. I think I've always been quite sensible with fuel. So I think I've done enough to kind of keep myself just spinning away, and got into T2 through the bike to one side. But it's a staggered T2A for the run. So you do 17K basically uphill through heather, and then by the time you get to the next checkpoint, it's whether you make the cut-off.
It's one way or the other.
So you can either do the mountain course up in Ben Haig, but I was quite happy that it was be a white t-shirt for me as opposed to the blue. But considering I didn't feel too good getting off the bike and I didn't run too much for that 17K, I think I kind of just stretched it out for most of it. But by the time I got picked up Dave, my trusty companion for the remainder of the run, I'd actually started to rally around, and it's not an easy route, but it's the alternative lower route to get back into Shield Dyke. So another bucket list.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So we've talked about Keltman a few times before. There are people with unfinished business. We'll be talking about that in the future. People are going again this year for the big one. So this is an event that features quite a bit in these discussions. So here we are where we are, and we started with where we are now. Let's talk a little bit about aspirations from here and what you're hoping to achieve in the short, medium, and long term from here going forward.
Yeah, sure. So obviously on a bit of a training break at the moment, but there's definitely.
And I mean overall, by the way, some of that's to do with triathlon, but I mean much more broadly. What are your goals? What are your aspirations?
I think I pretty much kind of covered all of my bucket list events. I think just staying in touch with the club, and I mean clearly where I am at the moment with with recovery, and getting to a stage where I can actually start to get back into some form of training regime as well. I think it's short-term goals are get fit and well enough to feel comfortable enough to maybe start with a park run, and get back in the pool. Clearly, my immune system at the moment is means I can't swim
because the red blood cell thing is a challenge, isn't it?
Yeah. So and chlorine is it tends to impact with the chemotherapy as well. So I'm not allowed to swim. But I'm hoping to get back on the bike at the end of the year, and just kind of do some hill walking. That's short-term goals for me. But into next year, who knows? Maybe New Year's Day try might be might be achievable. Just don't tell the wife.
That's quite sharp in this year. So
yeah. But
if you get to that, that'll be something.
yeah, but I'm being sensible. And you know what I'm capable of and what the, you know, my body's going to allow me to do. But yeah, I don't see any reason why.
But the treatment's going well so far, and there's another phase to go, but all on track. And then there's some stem cell. Is that right?
Yeah. So into June, early July, they'll extract my own stem cells and freeze them down, and they hit me with a bit more treatment just to make sure that absolutely the cancer suppressed to a level where they're happy to then put my stem cells back in, and then a couple more cycles of chemotherapy, and I'm told that I could be then into just maintenance treatment then for the next few years, which is I'll take that.
Okay, cool. Let's throw it open to questions from anyone. If anyone has got anything they want to throw into the discussion.
You're going to make some sausage, aren't you?
Feel free.
What happens in Keltman?
There's a story there about
There's a story.
Yeah.
So Dave supported me when I did Keltman, and then a year later I supported him, and he was struggling.
So I'm going to be supporting Warren this year, so I'm taking notes furiously now.
It was struggling with his nutrition. So smoked sausage is something that I kind of, it's
works for
salty,
you.
it's protein, it works
Because
for me.
gels doesn't work for you.
So I was force feeding him smoked sausage. And yeah, it was I think it's a new one on his nutrition list now.
At that point, he just didn't care anymore. Good. Any other quick questions from anyone, or?
I want to ask. I'm also part of Warren's support group. What was it that your support group did that really irritated you, and that you could have done without? You know, what would you say? I should stop?
So what was it? Just for the audio, in case it doesn't come through. What was it that?
I think Dave can tell you what I irritated him more.
What irritates the most from a support group? There's an ulterior motive to this question, I'm sure.
Not at all. To be fair, don't go too far ahead on the bike. You know, just be prepared to just kind of stop and touch base and swear at them, wave at them, you know, offer them whatever they want. But it's a bit of a lonely bike because it's quite a spread field. So if you don't see somebody for quite a while, that can, you know, put you in a dark place. And luckily for me, when I did Keltman, there was a couple of guys from the club that were doing it, so I was seeing different support teams, which was really nice to see a familiar face. But yeah, I'd say don't kind of get ahead of yourself too much, because there's plenty of opportunities to stop. But I mean, Warren will be smashing it anyway. I'm expecting blue t-shirt.
Yeah.
Well, exactly. You were struggling to keep up with it.
Need a speedy car.
Yeah. What's that, man? Dibber. Yeah, so
Dibbergate. Now we have to find out. A final question: what is Dibbergate?
Well, you know, when you trust your support to kind of take care of you and make sure you've got everything you need before you get onto the coach, and then you get bussed around to the field where you're just about to get in the water, and you think, where's my dibber? So I had to go very shamefully to the vehicle, and thankfully they expect people like me to kind of forget the dibber. It was right where I left it, hanging over the bike when I got out of the water. But Dave's name was more because I was blaming him for it.
More notes been taken.
Yeah, totally. I got my own back though because I made him do star jumps when he got out of the water to warm himself up. So.
Yeah. Okay, so there's one more thing just to finish up on, but before we get to that, just to say the next episode in May will be with Dave. So we'll be talking more about X-Tri. I'll try my best to hang in there as a short distance person on the grim stories of going long until you've barely know your name anymore. But we'll find out more about that in due course. But final thing, Cole, I've just reflecting before we came in to do this and having chatted briefly the other day, I was just conscious that obviously you're not racing at all this year for very good reason. And many of us will be doing different events. And it suddenly struck me that to a certain extent, this is potentially your triathlon event for the year. You can't race, but doing a podcast is your triathlon event. So you can't do a triathlon event and go home empty-handed. So what I thought I would do is just dip into a little bit of a goodie bag, like you would get a goodie bag at the end of a race.
Oh,
And
amazing.
for taking part in your triathlon event this year,
Fantastic. Thank you.
you maybe just hold it up so that people know what we're talking about. Up here, yeah, there we go.
It's
So I just thought there's a little takeaway for your event of the year here, your triathlon event, and also just maybe when you're looking at that, it'll remind you of people in the club, and it'll remind you of kind of cautious but energizing and positive aspirations
definitely
down the line, and just thought it'd be fair to give you something to take away from coming in. So thank you very much for coming in. And an incredibly brave story, but I take your point early on about you like people to not be shy of talking to you about everything that you're dealing with and going through. So it's been great to have you here, and it's been really interesting to hear your story, and hopefully someone will pick up on listening to this who might have a pain in their ribs that they get checked out.
Yeah, absolutely.
So even that might be a good thing that comes out of this. But once again, thanks very much to you. Thanks very much to the live audience for coming in. And that's us for this episode. We'll see you next month with Dave. Thanks very much.
No problem. Thank you.